Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency, 504-556-0809 or davemietteINSagency.com.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll cover the home team. Specifically, we'll be still looking at football, the New Orleans Saints. We'll talk about the LSU Tigers. We'll get into some Tulane Green Wave. The NFL schedule comes out. Our crack staff back in the control room will let us know exactly what the schedule looks like at 6:30 when the Saints release it. The entire NFL will release it after this show at 7 o'clock tonight, so we'll have that for you at about 6:30. And to break it down for us, one of the best we have out there, Rene Nadeau of CrestCitySports.com and so much more. Rene, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us as always, and always good to have you come down, my friend.
It's always special, Eric, when we come down and get together, buddy, and I look forward to it, and we can have a good time today, man.
Yeah, we will. We will. Especially, again, we'll be able to be a first look at the schedule as it comes out. We know a little bit about what's going on with the schedule, but I'm going to save that so we get the entire schedule at 6:30 so that we can react kind of on the fly. First thing we kind of want to talk about a little bit is the Saints draft and some undrafted free agents. As I told the radio audience this week, one of the ways why I wanted to get you on is, you know, you work for CrestCitySports.com, you do a great job there, but you're also color commentator on college football.
Yes.
So you get a chance to be able to see a lot of these players up close and personal, and of course you got a great perspective on it. Plus, nobody does their homework like Rene Nadeau does. Before we get started, tell folks about CrestCitySports.com.
CrestCitySports.com, really proud and happy to be a part of that. Kenny Train does a great job. Got a great staff with us: Ed Daniels, Les East, Lenny Van Gelder, Jude Young. We got a lot of people who have a lot of sports background, and we cover it from soup to nuts, man. And do a lot of high school stuff, a lot of college. I focus on recruiting and college football, LSU, Tulane, and so I think the people we have, their background, we cover a lot of different areas in sports, and Lenny does a great job with horse racing, among other things. But so it's really fun to be with a group such as this.
Yes, no doubt about it. Let's start with Cesar Ruez. A lot of people thought Patrick Queen might be the pick, but again, Cesar Ruez is the pick. We've heard obviously about Larry Woolford, that they were not happy with Woolford last year in terms of, again, falling out of shape, the injury not playing up to his capabilities. Talk about Cesar Ruez as a player. Talk about Cesar Ruez as the pick at 24, if you would.
Surprised me, and it surprised a lot of people. But I'm going to tell you, it didn't shock me when you think about what Sean Payton explained, how he wants to solidify the middle and protect Drew Brees up the middle. Larry Woolford had a down season last year. They're still looking for that guy to play right guard. And Will Clapp's done a good job. Nick Easton's done a good job. But, you know, you want that guy. And you know, the split hairs, Eric McCoy, if you go back to his Texas A&M days, he's had like 36 starts at center and 2 at guard. Cesar Ruez has, I think, 31 or 33 starts at center and 5 at guard.
Right.
I know it's splitting hairs, but Cesar Ruez has a little more experience playing guard. And Eric McCoy has gotten a full year of experience. They've worked with him to be a NFL center. And I really think right now Cesar Ruez is going to start off at guard. It would be the easiest transition to go from college to guard in the NFL. And you'd have two guys. I mean, Cesar Ruez, yes, he'd be a center, but a center in the NFL and center in the Big Ten is two entirely different things. So it would be an easier transition for Cesar Ruez to go to guard. And if they feel like, the coaches feel like it'd be a better move for him, a better fit at center, in time, I think you'll see that. But I think to start, you see Eric McCoy at center and Cesar Ruez at right guard, and I wouldn't be surprised if it stays like that a while.
Right. Talk about Woolford, because again, the cap hit is around $12.8 million against the cap this year. If they cut him, they save $8 million. They can amortize that dead money, which is $4 million over 2 seasons, which is about $2 million a year for each season of dead money. Do you expect him with the Saints in training camp competing for that job? Do you expect the Saints to try to move him before training camp and hand the job to either Ruiz or McCoy? What do you expect to happen there?
I think I can see Woolford coming to camp and starting off like that. Teams may eventually decide that Woolford could help us, or maybe what we thought we had, we may not. An injury could play into it. But, if you let Woolford go for a 4th or 5th round pick, which you could get, you save yourself some money and you move him along and you get some capital on that. I could see that happening. They're not going to get a 2nd or 3rd round pick. 4th, maybe a 4th, probably a 5th, or even a 6th. But at least if you move him and you get something coming back in return, I can't see Larry Woolford being here as we get close to September.
Do you think he's going to get a chance to compete? Because let's face it, Peyton's already called him out. And again, by saying that Ruiz was brought in to start, not to sit, that is pointing right, obviously, at Larry Woolford. What do you think happens?
I think Larry Woolford, if he comes in and he proves he can be an asset to this team, he would be better than Ruiz there. So, yeah, he would be a better fit there. That's why I'm not surprised Andres Pete has come back, because I didn't think the grass would be green on the other side. And in fact, they brought him back, and he's pretty solid here now. But Ruiz would be the starter. But I think Woolford, if he can show the coaching staff, and he's a player, if he can show the coaching staff, Eric, that this is my job, I'm not going to give it away, I want to stay here, then he'll be hard to beat out. And Larry Woolford will be the starting guard. They're not going to hand it to a rookie.
Strengths and weaknesses of Cesar Ruez.
Quick hands, very sturdy, plays with balance, handles his man pretty well. He locks onto you and he plays with balance. He won't lunge. Very intelligent. Don't repeat the same mistake twice. And he's a competitor. He'll play snap the whistle. He's a guy that gives you everything he's got. He'll empty his bucket on every play. And I think the IQ kind of thing is really attractive to Sean Payton, because you want a rookie coming in, you want him to adapt quickly, to digest everything, and to be a very cerebral kind of guy. And Cesar Ruez is, in fact, that type of player.
For a guy that might be projected to start, not having the off-season workouts, not being in the facility, learning from the veterans, working out with the veterans, they're getting the classroom time over obviously the internet, using Zoom or again other apps like that, but not getting that one-on-one tutelage that you can get hands-on during, like you do during OTAs or even off-season workouts. How does that affect him in terms of his progress to maybe be a starter? And again, to me, that gives Woolford the inside track here if ultimately he returns.
It's a great point, and you cannot replace experience. Cesar Ruez would have been coming in for OTAs and mini camp and rookie camp and things like this. The coaches would have had a chance to look at him. He'd have had some competition with some rookies, some veterans. He could have leaned on some of these guys. He'd have leaned on Eric McCoy. What did you go through? Larry Woolford, I'm learning from you. I'm learning from Andres Pete. And he doesn't have all of that. And there's nothing can replace the experience he did not get. And that's going to impede his progress a little bit. I think, but Green rises to the top. Once he gets on the field and gets comfortable, and the coaches are going to work with him, they're going to understand that he did not have these extra reps, Eric, and they're going to work with him and things, and he'll come around. Maybe not as quick as he would have had he had these other OTA and mini camps, but he'll adapt.
Payton has decided to build this team inside out. Let's look forward at this offensive line now. It's a very young offensive line, and looks to be, again, a lot of high picks invested in that offensive line as well. What are your thoughts going forward?
Well, I still think they're very shy one tackle that they can plug in if they need to.
A swing tackle?
Yes, a swing tackle.
Okay.
I mean, you got Andres Pete there. You know, if in fact Larry Woolford was not there,
yes.
Again, you'd have to have Andres Pete go out to tackle like he did in the past, and have Nick Easton and Will Clapp go in.
Yes.
You're right there, but it kind of shakes the foundation a little bit. You really need they've tried to have some guys come in, the Greenrich kid and some other guys, and Marshall Newhouse
Cameron Tom.
Yeah, Cameron Tom, you know, and stuff. But you need a guy who can plug in a tackle and there's not a lot of drop off. Not Teron Armstead and Ramchak, those guys are Pro Bowl type guys. But if you can come in and just give them some quality reps, and they have not found that guy yet.
Right, and when I mentioned Cameron Tom, I mentioned him because there seems to be a log jam of players that can swing from guard to center, but as you mentioned, not can swing from guard to tackle.
It's a big jump. It's a big difference going in the NFL from guard to tackle. And you know, I've talked to Will Clapp. Will Clapp has played tackle, could play tackle at LSU, but going out to tackle in the NFL is a little different thing. And I'm not picking on him, but I'm using him as an example because I know Will. But you got to get a guy that's comfortable. Knows the game, knows what to expect as a tackle, as a right or left tackle, because you're facing those speed rushers. It's a lot different. You got a little help inside, as you know.
Yes.
You got a nose tackle, you got a linebacker shooting the A or B gap. You got some help there. When you're out on an island by yourself, either left or right tackle, you're facing those rushers, and that's a whole different ballgame.
Right. Let's go to their second pick, third round pick, Zach Bond out of Wisconsin. First of all, talk about his measurables, talk about the type of player he is, and then talk about how you think they will utilize him here in New Orleans.
You know, he's a guy that can play weak side. He's a 4.65 40 guy, 24 reps. He was a dual threat quarterback coming to Wisconsin. He will hammer you. You know, he hits. He's a guy that makes tackles in bunches. Sean Payton really liked the way he played linebacker. He good in open field tackling. He's another high IQ kind of guy.
Yes.
Very athletic, about 6'1", about 235, 240, up in that range. And they got a bargain with him. They really did. And they moved up and grabbed him. He was a guy could have gone in the first round. Easily going to go in the first round.
You had a first round grade on him.
Yeah. He's a guy that a lot of people liked in the first round. So he falls the way he fell, and the Saints feel like we got to scoop him up. He was really a bargain to where they got him.
Right.
And he's a guy that you got Kiko Alonso and you got Anzalone, guys who have had some trouble.
Yes.
You know, Anzalone, 11 starts in his career in the last 3 years.
Right.
Kiko Alonso did experience some problems towards the end of last year.
And 3 MCL injuries, right?
Yes, exactly. So you don't know. It's shaky.
Or is that ACL?
ACL, right.
ACL, right.
So you got some injury situations with Alonso and with Anzalone. So you got to have somebody that steps in there. Demario Davis is rock solid. But you need some linebackers, and you're going to have some guys here they're going to take long looks at. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring other players in. But this Zach Bond is going to get a long look because he can play all three, or maybe, they're going to start him off backing up Demario Davis, but he's going to look at middle linebacker. He'll look at strong side. He's going to look at everywhere to see where he best fits.
Do you think he starts off as more of a pass rusher in the beginning? Because again, the ability to utilize him on the outside in the A-B gap, you can move him all over along the line to be able to rush the passer.
If I had to guess, Eric, I think he's going to get the longest look on as an outside rusher, and he also gets some looks inside.
Okay.
As a middle guy. He can play in a nickel or dime situation. He can be an inside. He can be a guy that stays on the field. I think he's got some athletic skills. They could employ something like Demario Davis and Zach Bond in a 2 linebacker set.
Yes.
With the 5 DBs, and that would work. So I think that's something that he could fit in very well.
Right. You mentioned moving up. The Saints move up from 88 to 74. They give up a 2021 third-round pick. Now they have a compensatory pick coming back for Teddy Bridgewater, so they will have a third-round pick next year. Then, of course, I talked last week about the connections. You know these connections very well. You know Bobby April as good as anybody in this town. His son is the linebacker coach, Bobby April III in Wisconsin. So, again, there's that connection with the Saints there. Jim Leonard, as you know, played with the Saints, got a cup of coffee with the Saints. He's their defensive coordinator. So, again, that's the connection there and they were targeted. A lot of people thought Patrick Queen would be the 5th there. They had their eye on Zach Bond all the time as that linebacker pick.
And I'm going to tell you, and this may raise some eyebrows, but he reminds me, and I'm not the first one to think of this, so I'm not going to take credit.
Right.
But Keith Van Noy,
Okay.
who's now playing for the Dolphins, he won 2 Super Bowls with with the Patriots.
Yes.
He's a 7-year guy. 17 tackles, 17 sacks right now on his career. But Zach Bond is a little bit like him. Very solid. He contributed to the Patriots. Is now assigned with the Dolphins this year. But Zach Bond is a guy that I think can play a lot like him. And if that happens, that comes to fruition. And Keith Van Noy was a second-round draft choice with the Lions when he came into the game. So I think that's something that'll be an asset. But you're right. I think Jim Leonard. I think Bobby April Jr. I know Bobby April Jr. thinks a lot of him. And I tell you, Zach Bond is a kind of guy that the Saints, he can play here a long, long time. Doesn't have a history of injuries of any kind too, knock on wood. But he's been a guy that every time he's had a play in a game, he's done exceptionally well.
He did have that list for his Frank injury, his freshman, sophomore year.
Yeah.
But he's played 2 years since then. He had the diluted test at the combine, which he said it was from just drinking too much water. Do you think that's why he fell? Why a guy with a first-round grade tumbles like he does to the third round?
And it's most of the time it is exactly like you said. It's something in the draft. The more they look at these guys, Eric, the more they can find. You look at a beautiful car, and you look at it enough times, you'll find a kink here.
Flaw, yes.
Yeah. So I think it was somebody recognized something. It may be the pre-draft, stuff. But he fell for whatever reason out of the first round, and the Saints are glad to have him.
Yep, no doubt. Adam Troutman out of Dayton. Saints traded their 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round pick. They got the 7th round pick in the Bond trade. But to move up for Adam Troutman, break him down for us, and then I want to get into the picks that were given up for him.
Adam Troutman is a guy that he's got a tremendous upside. Played at Dayton, wasn't challenged a lot, but he's shown well in the Senior Bowl. 6'5", 255. Okay, you may think I'm crazy, but I'm gonna tell you, starting right now, he could develop into a Kyle Rudolph kind of guy, who is a second-round pick for the Vikings. 47 touchdowns, 425 grabs in his career with the Vikings. Kyle Rudolph is a little bigger, maybe 6'6", 265, but Adam Troutman's faster. He's a little faster than Rudolph. But, I think he needs to fine-tune his blocking a little bit. He's good enough to get on the field from the get-go. He's a guy that the Saints can upgrade that tight end position. You look at Josh Hill and guys like that, and they did good with what they have so far. But Jared Cook was certainly, but I mean, he's kind of in the twilight.
He's on the side of 30.
Yeah. So I mean, I think this was a good time to add a tight end to the mix, and I think Adam Troutman, once he gets with good coaching like he's going to get.
Yes.
And I don't discount what he had at Dayton, but it's going to be a whole different ball game when he gets with the Saints in the competition. I think you'll see a whole different Adam Troutman, and I think you can see him improving almost weekly once he gets with the Saints.
Right. Is that one of the reasons why you think they did not draft a wide receiver in this draft?
I think they focused more on their needs. I think that they knew they needed an interior guy. Cesar Ruez was the highest rated guy.
Yes.
Would they have taken Justin Jefferson? I don't know that. They might have. But I think they had Cesar Ruez rated so highly.
Yes.
I still think they have a need there. I don't think Emmanuel Sanders is a guy that's going to completely make them forget about it.
And you got to look at, he's got a 2-year deal. He's on the other side of 30. You need a young player that's ready to ascend to take his spot ultimately if and when he starts to decline or retires. And that was what, again, a lot of us that were thinking wide receiver was a need in this draft obviously felt, because, again, it's nothing against Sanders. He brings a lot to the table here, but looking down in the future, and then the depth of wide receivers in this draft that again are going to make NFL clubs, that was the other part of it. The 7th round selection. Saints trade their 6th round pick to get back into the draft to take Tommy Stevens out of Mississippi State by way of Penn State. What are your thoughts there?
Surprise. I don't see him, another Taysom Hill. The speed does not match up. Tommy Stevens, I think he threw for, in his career, both Penn State and Mississippi State, 15 touchdowns. I think he threw 6 interceptions and ran for 12 touchdowns. So that's really pretty close.
Yes.
He's a big guy. He has run a sub 4.5 40, but I don't think his skills are exactly similar. I don't think he's a special team guy or a blocker like a Taysom Hill is. Taysom Hill can play H-back, running back. I don't think Tommy Stevens is diverse as a Taysom Hill is. And Taysom Hill looks like a guy that can land on the practice squad, and he could develop a year or so, because I don't know if a team would have to pick him up, they'd have to put him on a roster.
Talking about Tommy Stevens,
Yeah,
right?
Tommy Stevens.
Okay.
I couldn't see Tommy Stevens getting picked up.
Right.
So if he lands on a practice squad, I think he'll develop a little
Right.
bit there. But I don't see the correlation. I don't see the same in the Taysom Hill that I do in Tommy
Right.
Stevens.
It's funny because the backstory is, again, the Taysom Hill package was created in Penn State by Joe Brady under Joe Moorhead, and of course brought that package to the Saints, and Taysom Hill obviously took over that package. We know that Joe Brady wanted him in Carolina, and that's one of the reasons why the Saints traded back into the draft to grab him, to keep him away from Carolina. And the other part of that is, again, we know what Joe Moorhead has been an influence on Joe Brady, who had an influence obviously on what's going on with the Saints now with the RPO game, and again using obviously Taysom Hill here. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Also be interesting to see again if they can afford to put him on a practice squad and not have another team come and grab him, or the possibility of using that same role, that same package that Taysom Hill's involved in.
Again, I've been wrong before, but I just think that he's not. He's a good quarterback. I'm not sure if he's an NFL quarterback, Tommy Stevens, yet. And again, I don't think he can match Taysom Hill for what Taysom Hill brings to the table.
Right.
And so many, as a Swiss Army knife, as covering special teams, returning kicks, as a blocking H-back, tight end, running back. I don't think Tommy Stevens is quite equipped to handle all his duties right now. And something that just came into my mind, to show you how long ago it's been since the Saints drafted a tight end. 2002, John Gilmore out of Penn State.
Yeah.
Before that, so they've drafted two quarterbacks, Austin Wheatley out of Iowa, in 2000 and 2002 Gilmore. So the Saints just do not spend a draft choice on a tight end.
Yes.
And to move up and take him, they really saw a lot.
Right, on Troutman.
in
Yeah,
Troutman,
yes, no doubt. It'd be interesting to see what happens there as far as that goes. I kind of agree with you. I don't think Tommy Stevens is going to be a quarterback in the NFL, but I think that their vision for him is, if Taysom Hill is to take over the quarterback position next year, and we'll get into that in a little while, if that was to happen, that he could be that Swiss Army knife for them, and maybe that's their thinking in getting back into the draft. Look, they have a 6th-round pick coming back next year in a compensatory pick. So again, they still have the pick, but yet they gave up a 6th-round pick to move up and to get a 7th-round pick, which is kind of unusual.
Yeah, and certainly I'm not gonna dispute with Mickey Loomis or Sean Payton.
Sure,
A lot more
or
than
Jeff
I do.
Ireland.
But I got to tell you, I just think that I'm like everyone else. I just was surprised to see that move. I thought they were finished with the draft. Move back to get Tommy Stevens. They obviously see some value there.
Yes.
And they obviously think that he's clay. They can mold a little bit and work with him, and introduce him to the special teams coach and see what they can get out of him.
Yes.
I think that and the special teams coach was at Penn State when he was there, so there's familiarity there. The assistant special teams coach for the Saints, I draw a blank right now his name, but so I think there's a connection there.
Yeah. Trading the 4th, 5th, and 6th and 7th-round picks for Troutman. The point system worked in the Saints' favor. I've been critical a little bit because this draft was deep with players at positions of need. They felt, again, that was the guy. They're very, very targeted on what they wanted to do in terms of the draft. What's your take?
And you mentioned wide receiver. Lil Jordan Humphrey is an example. Emmanuel Butler. You got guys that they feel like they got a chance to look at.
Tre'Quan Smith.
Tre'Quan Smith. Had a chance to look at last year. Tre'Quan Smith entering his 3rd season. I wouldn't write Lil Jordan Humphrey and Emmanuel off to right now, because they were both rookies and they can make a huge leap from this year. Right. They signed Austin Carr, which you don't know what you're going to get with that, but I mean, he's been around. He's been a solid player, if not spectacular. I wouldn't be surprised, Eric, if they eventually add a wide receiver that may be cut, or a trade with another team if they feel like, as training camp begins to unfold, that what they have is not quite what they need to get through an entire season. If they don't see enough from Tre'Quan Smith, from Lil Jordan Humphrey, Austin Carr, whatever it may be, that I can see them adding somebody. Emmanuel Sanders is going to be a big help to them, but I think they need another guy or two to really finish up the pile.
What about the snaps in the passing game that, again, Kamara and also Hill will get, Taysom Hill will get?
Kamara is he didn't have his best year last year, but Kamara is an elite guy, man. He's, Eric, as you know, he's one of the special guys, and Few running backs can do what he can do in the NFL. Taysom Hill, again, he's so valuable, and that's why he deserved the salary that he got, the contract he got, because he brings so much to the table more than a quarterback. You and I were talking off the air about, had a story on Taysom Hill and from Nate Singleton, who played with Steve Young.
Yes.
And there's some comparisons there, but the thing is that the 49ers on Steve Young, Eric, sold out and decided they're going to make him a quarterback, and they focused all the attention. They'd have to get Taysom Hill away from doing all these other responsibilities and focus solely on being a quarterback.
Yes.
And if that would have happened, the offense would tweak a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You brought him up. We'll get back to undrafted free agents in a moment. Let's talk Taysom Hill. 2 years, $21 million, $60 million of that guaranteed, $1 million in incentives. 2/3 of that contract will be paid within the 2/3 of that contract. That extension is guaranteed. He's the highest paid backup in the NFL right now. Talk about him and what you think his role will be now that Jameis Winston has signed with the team. Again, $1.1 million is the base value of that contract, $148,000 signing bonus, and again, $3.4 million in incentives is what's being bantered about there. Talk about the Winston versus Hill for the backup quarterback job.
There's a reason Jameis Winston came here with a 1 year. He's betting on himself. And I can see Taysom Hill, regardless of what is said to the media, that he's right where he was last year behind Teddy Bridgewater. And Jameis Winston came here for a reason, and he feels that this might be my job if and when Drew Brees leaves,
Yes.
and I just need a new setting. The Saints are a great organization, and they fit my skills and everything else like that. Jameis Winston, 26 years old, he sees a bright future here. So to answer your question, Drew Brees, Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill.
Okay.
I don't think his responsibilities, they're still going to give him packages like they did in the past.
I agree. Talking about Taysom Hill.
Yeah, Taysom Hill. They're going to still give him packages in the past, but I don't see him throwing 10 times in a game. If he's on the field, he's going to run most of the time,
Yes.
80% of the time, and he's on there as a decoy. He's on there to do a number of things, either be a blocker, receiver, or a runner. And you look at his stats, what he's already done. Taysom Hill as a passer, and they don't wow you, but you got to respect what he can do. And when he's on the field, he can do a lot of different things. And I think that all the parts equate to he's worth a nice contract that the Saints gave him because he does so many things. You'd have to get so many players to fill this role if he wasn't a member of this team.
So you think this contract is not so much about being maybe the starting quarterback next year, but a reward for being the jack of all trades?
Yes, and there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee. We don't know this if Taysom Hill will be here next year.
Right. Well, he's got a 2-year deal, but yes, right. How about Jameis Winston? Let's talk about if there is an injury to Brees, and it's a long-term injury. Is it Hill or Winston? And if there's an injury to Brees and it's a short-term injury, is it Winston or Hill?
Depends when it happens.
Okay.
If they go through camp and it is in October, November, it's Jameis Winston.
Okay.
I think it depends on how quickly Jameis Winston digests this offense and how comfortable the coaches are with Jameis Winston. If Sean Payton feels like Jameis Winston has digested this and there's little drop off to Drew Brees, again, the later in the season it would have happened, Eric, I think that Jameis Winston would be the guy. But if it would have happened in week 1, week 2, I think they'd lean more in Taysom Hill in that situation.
Talk about Jameis Winston, change of scenery. What do you think of him as a quarterback, watching him in his first 5 years at Tampa Bay, and now the transition here to New Orleans?
He was a little wild, and when I say that, I think he was trying to do too much too soon as a rookie. He had a lot on his shoulders, and as a top draft choice and everything else, he felt like he had something to prove. I think this will give him an opportunity to sit back and observe, and as he said, learning from the best. He'll be in the shadow of Drew Brees. He'll be in a room with Drew Brees. There'll be no pressure on him. I think you'll see a much improved and much different Jameis Winston when he does get an opportunity. I think you'll see him more relaxed. I'm not sure if he was ready to assume the role that he had in Tampa Bay. And I'm not saying a maturity situation. It was just a lot on his shoulders, and he probably wasn't ready to handle it. He's still a young man, and I think he's here a year or so. I'm sure he's betting on if Drew Brees were to step away after this, I could run this team.
Yeah. Skill set, I got to believe, again, he can make all the throws.
Yes.
Again, he's got experience. The biggest knock against him, as you mentioned, again, decision making in a lot of cases. And again, at least the hope is he gets in here in that quarterback room with Brees, much like Teddy Bridgewater did, and they learn from Brees on how to prepare, again, game time situations, and again, how to take care of the ball and make the right decisions.
Teddy Bridgewater was about the same age when he came over here. Really, if you look at it, he was a young man. He was in the NFL, he had some experience, but I think he improved being in that locker room with Drew Brees. I don't think a year or two ago, Teddy Bridgewater could have won 5 games like he did with the Saints. They did this year. I think he took command. He had more confidence in himself. His skills improved, and you could look at the same kind of situation with Jameis Winston. Eric, I think that if he's put in a situation that his confidence has come up, the coaching staff knows what he can do. They're going to allow him to do the things he does well.
Yes.
He forced too many passes, 30 interceptions. A lot of those are bad decisions, forcing it in tight windows that he shouldn't have thrown. That can all go away. The coaching staff can certainly improve on that, and he can improve on that. But I see a lot of correlation between how Teddy Bridgewater improved and how Jameis Winston can improve if he's on board.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We come back, we'll have the schedule for you guys. Again, that's came out about 3 minutes ago. And then again, we're going to talk about the undrafted free agents. We'll get into some LSU and Tulane talk as well here on the program. And if we have time, we'll talk about what maybe the future of sports looks like in a COVID-19 world going forward. Our guest tonight, Rene Nadeau of CrescentCitySports.com. I'm your host, Eric Asher. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Stick around. We're going to hear from our underwriters next, and then we'll be right back with you.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Rene Nadeau of CrescentCitySports.com. Hang in there, New Orleans. Going to come to the Saints schedule in just a moment. But we have not had a chance on this program to talk about the undrafted free agents yet. And I thought the perfect guy to have on the program this week to kind of talk about some guys that he think has a shot to make this team would be Rene Nadeau of CrescentCitySports.com. We've seen Taylor Stallworth. We've seen Deontay Harris. We've seen a history of undrafted free agents make this Saints team. Even on teams that were very, very good, they still had undrafted free agents make the team. And the Saints have kind of hung their hat on telling undrafted free agents, if you come to New Orleans, you'll have an opportunity to play and start. Pierre Thomas was the first guy, right?
Yep. And a year ago, and we talk a lot,
right?
You and I would have never bet that Shy Tuttle would be playing as
much
as he did last year.
No way.
I didn't give him a chance in hell. But,
no way.
You got some guys, and there's 3 guys on defense and 3 guys on offense. I think I have a legitimate shot. One guy that jumps off the page right away is Joe Bochy. He's a guy from Michigan State. He's a linebacker, 6'1", about 235, 41 games. He tested positive for the performance-enhancing drug, but he was a 2-time captain for the Spartans. And he can play middle linebacker, and I'll tell you, he's very, very similar to Zach Bond. He's a guy that can play a couple of 2-3 spots linebacker, special teams. He's got a chip on his shoulder now because he was undrafted. He should have been a 4th, 5th, or 6th round guy. He was not drafted. Keith Washington, the third out of West Virginia, runs a 4.38, special teams guy. He's a guy, he started at Michigan, went to junior college and wound up at West Virginia. Malcolm Roche is a guy from Madison Prep, 6'3", 298, can play inside or outside. In sub packages, he can move inside. He's a 4.84 guy, moves pretty good for a defensive lineman. And he's a guy that I kind of liken a little bit to Shai Tuttle. He's going to come under the radar. He has some skills about him. He's a local guy. Fans are going to talk about him. Media's going to talk about him. I think he's going to get a legitimate shot. That's 3 guys on defense. On offense, a guy who I like a lot, Juwan Johnson out of Oregon. He played at Penn State, was a roommate of Tommy Stevens. He's a 4.58 guy, 6'4", 230, Eric. He can transition and move to tight end. I really think that. You add about 10, 15 pounds on him, and he knows he is here to play special teams. The special teams assistant coach for the Saints is the reason he came here, and Juwan Johnson is a guy who will do anything he has to get on the field, and he knows that his role is going to be making or breaking on special teams. Marquez Callaway is a 6'1", 205-pound guy at Tennessee. Not a fast guy, about 4.55, but he's a crafty guy. He's got good hands, Eric. He blocks, and you know how much Sean Payton puts emphasis on wide receivers who block. He's a guy that I could see rising to the top, has a few good camps, and he gets an exhibition season, whatever's going to happen there, or gets in some scrimmages and practices, and he could elevate his game with the opportunity. And Tony Jones is a guy who really had a big year again with Notre Dame last year. 5'11", 225 pounds, physical guy, runs between the tackles, good blocker, pretty good receiver. Tony Jones is a guy that, and we see this every year. Chris Ivory, Pierre Thomas. There's always a running back, undrafted guy that gets in that Saints camp. He makes hay, and Tony Jones could be that guy.
Let's get to the schedule. Again, this schedule just came out, and the 2020 opponents for the New Orleans Saints last year went 125, 130, and 1. They had a 490 collective win percentage last season. If you look at the schedule as it is today, without any of the additions, they have the 24th toughest schedule in the NFL. That changes. Obviously, again, with the additions of free agents, with the additions of the draft picks, and again, you never know from year to year how a team is going to go. We've seen teams go from worst to first constantly within the NFL. It's a very fluid league. But the Saints will open up with Tampa Bay at home, and of course Tom Brady. Your thoughts on that?
Are you surprised with that? I mean, is that not the marquee game of the weekend, Eric? I mean, you got Tom Brady, Ron Gronkowski on there. Devin White comes home, former LSU linebacker. He'll be there with the Buccaneers. So I mean, and you got a team that I think Tom Brady's going to lift this team. They'll improve. They were 7-9 last year. He'll put 3 or 4 more wins for sure in the win column. But that has to be the marquee game in the opening week, Tom Brady against Drew Brees, and the good thing is going to be at home.
The Saints will open up the new stadium in Las Vegas in week 2. They'll take on the Raiders there. I understand that the Raiders are going to open up against Carolina in Carolina, so the Saints will be opening up that stadium. Again, a lot of Saints fans, if we can get to the point where you have not any restrictions with COVID-19, they'll be in Las Vegas for that opener as well. That'll be one of the toughest tickets in the country.
I've talked to some friends already making plans to go to Las Vegas, and I don't know if they're going for the roulette wheels or the game, but they're going. And the relationship that you and I both know that Sean Payton has with John Gruden, that's going to be interesting. Yes. John Gruden, if he can get and Mike Mayock, the way they're putting this team together the last 2 years, man, if they can take down the New Orleans Saints, what a feather in their cap that would be. So that would be a great way to open that stadium. And don't think that John Gruden is not aware. He's got to be licking his chops right now, thinking that, man, if we can come away with the win, if we can take Carolina down right now with Teddy Bridgewater, and if we can take down the Saints for the opening game in this stadium, that would be huge. And John Gruden's already looking at that game.
You better believe it. The Saints will come back home for week 3. They'll take on the Green Bay Packers.
Aaron Rodgers. I mean, what another matchup again. You got just very much like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers against Drew Brees. And that's always a good matchup. Very intriguing matchup when the Saints play the Packers. And the Saints have had a lot of success here against the Green Bay Packers. And we'll see if that holds true. But Aaron Rodgers, he's looking to make that next step, and this, you know, in the Green Bay Packers' eyes, this could be the year, and we'll find out very early if they are worthy of that. But the Saints, right now, that's going to be 3 competitive games, and that'll tell you pretty much where they're going.
Week 4 is at the Lions on October the 4th.
Again, the Lions have been down for a while, but I think they're a team that, you know, sooner or later they're gonna step it up, and I think that this is an opportunity. Mike Patricia has been doing all that he can. And this could be a year that the Lions make a step forward.
The Los Angeles Chargers come to the Dome on October the 12th in Week 5.
Justin Herbert, will he be under center?
Maybe.
You know,
Could it be Cam Newton?
Who knows?
Right.
You know, but it'll be interesting to see that the Chargers. That's going to be a team that's certainly on the rise. And that'll be a good opponent for the Saints.
Yeah, week 6 will be a bye week for the Saints. That's not a bad place for a bye week, is it?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, it's especially look at the schedule, Eric. That's a brutal schedule.
Yes.
You start off with the Buccaneers and then Oakland, you know, and then the Packers. So they're going to really need a little break there for the home stretch, if you will. Even though it may be early in the season, I think they'll need it.
Saints take on the Panthers as they come back for Week 7.
Teddy Bridgewater. So that's to be Drew Brees against Teddy Bridgewater. And we'll have a pretty good idea how Teddy Bridgewater is going to do based on his game against the Raiders the first week of the season. And into Week 6, you know, how has he progressed? And so we'll have a pretty good idea how good these Carolina Panthers are going to be.
Yeah, at Week 8, they'll go to Chicago and take on the Bears. Now, that's a November 1st game. Hopefully, again, that won't be inclement weather, but at least they'll get them in November, not in December.
Yeah, and it's much better to get them before it gets blistery cold.
Yes.
But you know, those fans in Chicago, they're brutal. And anytime the Saints go there, it's a war on the field and in the stand. Right. So I think it'll be interesting. Mitch Trubisky, where will he be at this point? How good will he be? Will he still be a quarterback for the Bears? Or will it be someone else taking a spot?
They go to Tampa Bay and take on the Buccaneers in Week 9.
We'll see what happens if the Saints will split with the Buccaneers,
right,
or they can go 2-0. But you know, the thing is with the Saints and the Buccaneers in a conference like that, that's going to be a dogfight. You know, that's going to be 2 teams that's going to be jockeying for the lead in the NFC South.
Losaints will come back home, take on the 49ers in Week 10. This is a great home schedule.
Oh,
man.
my goodness. I mean, Garoppolo and Kittle come back. I mean, and look what they did last year. The Saints certainly have an extra grind with them. And the way they lost last year, it might be a way to redeem themselves.
The first of 2 games against the Falcons is in Week 11.
Matt Ryan, again, it's about time for him to do something in the Falcons. You know, they've been down for a while, and I think that this is going to be a team that needs to step up, and they know if they're going to save their coach's job,
right,
the Falcons are going to have to do something this year.
Going to have to go into cold Denver and Mile High on November the 29th, Week 12, to take on the Broncos.
Yeah, and Drew Lock will probably be the quarterback then, and we'll see how he'll be doing. John Elway has done a good job putting a team together, and I think the Broncos can be a player in the AFC. I think the Broncos are a team, if they can put it together, they've been putting this team together the last 2 or 3 years, and if all the pieces fall in place, the Broncos could certainly make a run in the playoffs.
Right. And then again, the second game with the Atlanta Falcons will be the following week. That's Week 13. That's early December. So again, another chance to take on the Falcons.
Yeah, and depends on what can the Saints go 2-0? I mean, it's always a dogfight, regardless how the record is between the 2 teams. The Saints look like they should have won last year in Atlanta, and look what happened. The Falcons almost pulled out a win. So even when your opponent, if the Falcons are 3-10 at the time, you got to be ready for anything.
Week 14, they travel to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting. Carson Wentz, what will he be? How good will his team be? Doug Peterson has done a great job, won a Super Bowl a couple years ago. That's a team that certainly, the Philadelphia Eagles is a team you got to watch and could be certainly in the thick of things in the playoffs.
Quick turnaround because the Saints will take on the Chiefs on a Sunday night game in Week 15. And then it is Christmas Day, which is a Friday, to take on the Minnesota Vikings at home. So back-to-back games at home with the Chiefs and Vikings.
Patrick Mahomes against Drew Brees.
Right. Unreal.
You know, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Right.
So how good is that team going to be? Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I can see him being a starter from the get-go, even though Damian Williams was a starter last year in the Super Bowl. And Minnesota Vikings come back with Justin Jefferson, Irv Smith,
yes,
Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook. They got some weapons, and that's going to be very, very interesting. You got some local flavor in Justin Jefferson, Irv Smith, the tight end from Brother Martin in Alabama. So, and Christmas Day, that goes to show what the league thinks of the Saints.
Right, and then they finish up with the Panthers on January the 3rd, Teddy Bridgewater and the Panthers. Obviously, again, you don't know what's going to happen with the Panthers, but again, you figure that Bridgewater and, of course, the ability of Joe Brady to know a little bit about this Saints team. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. But finishing with an NFC South opponent.
And the Carolina Panthers don't sell a defense short either.
I want to ask you, first of all, do you think that the schedule will start on time? The NFL has really been, look, they have been stringent about everything that they've been able to do in the offseason. They've done it as it's been designated on the calendar. And, there's thought that maybe, again, they might move the season to October, start the season in October, depending on, again, where the country is in terms of COVID-19. What are your thoughts? Do you think they start on time?
Everything I've heard, people much wiser than I feel like this is a doable thing. I think both the NFL season and the college football season will both start on time. Certainly there'll be a season in both, but I really feel if I was a betting man, I would bet that both the NFL and college football would start off at a regular time in early September.
I talked about this both here on the TV show and the radio show. I think that when you look at the biggest disadvantage among NFL teams, if they play for the games without fans in the stadium, I think there are two cities that really suffer: Seattle and New Orleans.
I totally agree with you. I mean, because the fan base in both, the fan base in New Orleans, what a difference they make. And you talk to the players, and being at games and stuff and covering the games, you can hear the noise and things like that, and see the reaction on the players' faces. We talk to players for the Saints, and the same thing for the Seattle Seahawks, because they are renowned fan bases, and they make a difference. I mean, the fans, Saints football, it means everything to these fans. And it would be a tremendous loss if you do not have the fan base, or even a watered down fan base, Eric, for a Saints home game.
Let's grab a call from Tom in Metairie. We'll go to the phone lines now for a couple minutes. Tom, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. How you doing, Tom?
Hey, Eric. I sound like a broken record. I constantly complain about Marcus Williams. Do you think Jenkins maybe could put this guy in the right spot and teach him to play better this year, since we look like we're not going to make any changes back in that safety spot? I'll hang up and listen.
Nobody better to answer that question than this gentleman right here.
Marcus Williams?
Yes.
He's got the skills. Thank you, Tom. He's got the skills to do it, and he's got the ability. And I just need a little confidence. That disaster a couple of years ago in Minnesota really hit him, and I think it woke him up a little bit. To answer your question, he can be a solid safety in the NFL. And I think Sean Payton and staff and Dennis Allen have the confidence in him. He's going to have to show it on the field, but right now he have to prove them wrong. I don't think he's looking over his shoulder worried if he's going to be a starter or not. I think Sean Payton and Dennis Allen feel very confident in Marcus Williams.
Before we move on to the college game, Malcolm Jenkins, Emmanuel Sanders, DJ Swearingen comes back. Michael Burton, the fullback from the Washington Redskins, really was their base unrestricted free agent crop. What do you think about that?
Malcolm Jenkins was a big add, not only on the field as a player, but in the locker room as well. Emmanuel Sanders is a guy who did it against the Saints, and he was a guy, even though he's not in the twilight, Eric, but I think he's still got a couple of good years left in him. Emmanuel Sanders is a guy that was a great add. With Michael Burton, he's been a great blocker, and I think that he'll go down as one of the better blockers that the Saints have had, and you know how much they use their fullback and as a receiver and as a blocker, and I think Michael Burton kind of fits that. Swearingen will be a guy who will be a special teams and extra, but with Burton is a guy that I think is a really, really good fit here, and I think the Saints are really glad to have him.
Let's go back to the phone lines and let's head to Bell Chase for Dwayne. Dwayne, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. All right, we've lost Dwayne. Let's shift to the college game because something historic happened in the NFL draft with the LSU Tigers. Again, they tied Ohio State with the largest draft class ever with 14 players chosen. Again, when when you look at the number of first-round picks, 5 first-round picks for the LSU Tigers. Again, that's the most first-round picks in the history of the LSU Tigers. They didn't beat Miami out, who had 6 first-round picks in 2004, but they get 14 drafted players and then an opportunity to bring on 6 more undrafted free agents into the NFL. So that's 20 players off this team that have a chance to play in the NFL next year. Quite an accomplishment for Ed Orgeron and the LSU Tigers. Talk a little bit about that.
And if you look at it, Eric, you got out of those guys drafted, you probably have 10 that's going to probably be starters. Joe Burrow is going to start. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to probably start. Justin Jefferson is going to start. Thaddeus Moss at tight end and Stephon Sullivan coming on. They'll have an opportunity. Thaddeus Moss is going to be a good pickup. Sadiq Charles, the Redskins traded Trent Williams, and Sadiq Charles comes in. He'll get a shot at that left tackle. Right. Cornelius Lucas, who's been a journeyman, he's just starting at left tackle right now. Let's see, Damian Lewis. I think he'll be a starter at guard for the Seattle Seahawks. Lloyd Cushenberry, he'll be a swing guy because they're pretty solid in the middle. Kaylavon Chason at Jacksonville, I think he'll be a starter.
Right.
Rashard Lawrence at tackle is going to get a good shot. Brendan Fiocco with the Chargers is going to get a good shot. Jacob Phillips with Cleveland and Patrick Queen with the Ravens. Those guys should start from day one. Michael Divinity is going to get an opportunity to play with the Buccaneers. Might he be on a roster when they come in? And I think another Grant Delpit with Cleveland is also going to be a starter at safety. Christian Fulton, a cornerback with Tennessee, he'll work his way in. They're pretty solid. The Titans are pretty solid at cornerback. But you got 10 guys. Blake Ferguson, the deep snapper with the Dolphins.
Right.
I mean, when you draft a deep snapper in the 6th round, you pretty much pencil him in as a starter. So you got 10 guys that are going to get a chance, to start in the NFL. And I mean, you got Thaddeus Moss, Brandon Traore is going to get a chance with the Bears. Adrian McGee with the New Orleans Saints, and he could be a swing guy. He really stepped up his game. Derek Dillon with the Giants. So you got 20 guys, and I'm saying at least 10 I think have a legitimate shot to be starters on opening day.
Yeah, wow, incredible. Now, again, Tulane wasn't left out the mix. Darnell Mooney goes in the 5th round to Chicago. Thaddeus Keys goes in the 7th round to Kansas City. They had undrafted free agents sign as well. Jalen McCleskey with Atlanta, Darius Bradwell with the Chargers, and Christian Monteo with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Well, and a couple of guys from Louisiana that I think you got to recognize. Robert Hunt, 2nd round to the Dolphins, and he's a guy who can start day one as a guard. Kevin Dotson went in the 4th round ULL to the Pittsburgh Steelers. L'Jarius Sneed went to the Kansas City Chiefs, and he can play safety or corner. 41-inch vertical, 4.37 40. And Amrik Robertson, 14 interceptions.
Yes,
he's
amazing.
going to the Raiders, and he'll be a cornerback or a safety of special teams. 184 tackles for Amrik Robertson, and he's a Homer guy, a Thibodeau high school guy. So that's some guys Louisiana's produced, and I think all those guys that we mentioned have a great chance to be in the NFL into opening day. Some
really good news for LSU this week. Garrett Nussmeier is a commitment, the quarterback out of Texas, to the Tigers for 2021. All of a sudden, that quarterback room has got a lot of talent in it. When you talk about Brad Johnson's son, you talk about the kid from Ponchatoula, TJ Finley, of course, the Miles Brennan, and of course now Nussmeier, and the possibility that Caleb Williams, the 5-star dual threat quarterback out of Washington, D.C., he's a finalist. LSU's a finalist along with Oklahoma and Maryland. Big catch for the Tigers with Nussmeier.
That's the Joe Burrow factor, Eric. And the thing with Caleb Williams, I think if I had a bet, I think Oklahoma has the inside track, but LSU's right behind. And Max Johnson with his dad and Doug Nussmeier, who I know very well, with Garrett, those two guys are coming in. Doug Nussmeier groomed his son to be a quarterback. He played in the NFL. Brad Johnson, 13, 14 years in the NFL, won a Super Bowl. So those guys, they chips off the old block, if you will. Miles Brennan, I still think it's his job to lose, but I think Max Johnson, I can see him making some strides this year. As a true freshman, I think he's going to be that good. And, you still have Jamar Chase, Terrace Marshall, Trey Palmer, Don't sell him short. I think he can be very, very special. Racy McMath, and you got Eric Gilbert, the tight end, the best tight end in the nation.
Yeah.
He's gonna steal some passes away from some of these wide receivers. You're gonna see. I think he'll break Thaddeus Moss's record for most receptions by a tight end at LSU.
When you look at the Tigers right now, biggest holes they have to fill. What position?
Offensive line. You got Chase and Hines. It's a lot of uncertainties. The only guy you can definitely count on, Eric, is Austin Deculus at right tackle. You got right guard. You got Ed Ingram. You got what's the guy's name at left guard? Cordell Thomas.
Right.
You get Chase and Hines in the center, and left tackle Dare Rosenthal. Dare Rosenthal is a big 6'8", 330-pound guy. But he missed out in spring, and this would have been a very, very valuable spring. LSU signed a grad transfer the other day, Liam Shanahan. Okay, he's 6'5", 275. They can bulk him up to 290. But I would think they would look at Liam Shanahan first as a left tackle or a left guard. I think he'll get a good look at one of those spots, and I think that'll help solidify the offensive line, because right now that might be the weak link on the offense.
Is that the Harvard grad transfer?
Yes. So Liam, and he's very, very intelligent.
Right. How about Tulane? How about Tulane's holes that they have to fill coming into the season?
They are. The thing is Willie Fritz has done a great job stocking that offensive and defensive line, and this is the first time in years that I can say that Tulane's offensive line is going to be a strength. I think they have 8 guys that they can play. That defensive line with Patrick Johnson, that he could have been drafted this year. Patrick Johnson is a rush guy, 6'3", 250. He's right now could be a second or third round pick next year. But the defensive line, the front seven for Tulane, and the offensive line for Tulane is really, really solid right now. Quarterback situation, Keon Howard, we don't know how they're going to do. But running back, Eric, they are 6 deep.
Yes.
And there's going to be a lot of competition, and you have fresh legs all the time, and there's very low drop-off. If you want to look at a dark horse, Tajay Spears is a guy from Ponchatoula who may rise to the top. He may be the primary back before it's all over.
Wow. Anything you're working on upcoming with CrescentCitySports.com? I know you just did a great article about Taysom Hill and the Steve Young factor there. What else do you have in town?
Well, I had a chance to do some stuff on some of the undrafted rookies that we'll have coming out. Have my Heisman finalists, who I think may be the Heisman finalists in college football this year. Some 2 sports stars, if you will, guys who played a couple of sports, and recruiting is always going to be right there.
It is.
I got a lot of recruiting stories coming out on both LSU and Tulane, so that's not far off.
Always good to have you, Rene.
Eric, my pleasure, buddy.
That's Rene Nadeau of CrescentCitySports.com. Again, thanks so much for tuning in tonight. We always appreciate you guys checking us out. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE at 10 p.m. Also on Pelican Sports Television. That's 9 p.m. every Friday night. We also post the shows on my social media page. You can go to WLAE-TV's YouTube page, and you'll be able to check it out there as well. That's all the shows. And then all the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports can be seen at ericasher.com as well. Also, you can catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2, and the iHeart Radio app. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. And as previously mentioned, all of these shows, every show that we've ever done from Inside New Orleans Sports is on my website, ericasher.com. Special thanks to our fantastic underwriters. Without the underwriters, this show would not be possible. Please support those underwriters. And again, we appreciate each and every one of them. Also to the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Naila Jones, Alex Chacon, Tommy Fairley, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for tuning in. Special thanks to Rene Nadeau for joining us on the program. We'll check you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Be safe out there.